good evening to everybody, and just welcome everybody to Caroline's Corner. It's taken an energy, it's taken its own sort of journey, and it's evolving how it's meant to. So there's no pushing with this, and it's going to do whatever it's going to do. So this is a safe place, just as I say, my name is Caroline, it's a safe place for conversations to take place. And the intention, and my intention, is to create unique conversations with people who want to find meaning in their lives and to share it with the world. And I'm so excited about my lovely friend who's on tonight, Louise. I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes. So just to give a little overview of myself briefly, and what I'm choosing to do, not necessarily who I am, but what I've chosen to do and have done is I'm a founder of an organization, and I was the CEO, and it was around suicide and mental health, and that was for well over 25 years with my beautiful husband, John, who was my backbone. And I know for sure he's very proud of me and his son Connor and his daughter Amy, by us coming together and creating this space and this podcast. I can see him smiling. So that was what I done. I'm trained as a therapist many years, and I'm choosing to practice again in very different way, and in different environments. And I get to work with pretty beautiful people. I've worked with Social Entrepreneur Ireland and the Iris O'Brien Foundation, obviously setting up an organisation, being mentored. So that was an amazing journey as well. Taught him anew for 12 years, loved it, the foundation and counselling skills. Amnesty International, we took on mental health as a human rights issue, which I think that's a forever journey. And then I got and my friend Colin, he is no longer physically on this earth. He set up No Panic, which is still going very strong, and that's for acute anxiety. Now I am, I'm working in a GP practice, and the part of our conversation tonight with Louise is I met my beautiful Louise in the second mountain. We'll chat about that. I'm also working with a lovely organisation, and that's where there's one-to-one counselling. So I get to be part of that again. And I am studying away different areas, and just recently started up with another organisation going in, doing some EAP work, which is employee assistant program work. So it's nice. It's like it's doing its own thing, and it's creating. I keep checking in with life, with John, and just say, please guide me and direct me. So that's an overview. And the most important part is that I get to sit here tonight and chat with the beautiful Louise. So if it's all right, I'm going to ask you, Louise, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and if you want to give a broader or whatever, and you go with the energy, the flow. There's no out formulas. It's not about, but we've the 4 little questions because they're lovely little questions. Is that all right?
That is lovely, Caroline. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And I always feel such joy in my heart when I see you, when I walk into work and see you. We've had a lovely connection, haven't we?
We still do, yeah.
It's really nice. So thanks for having me. Yeah, absolutely delighted to be here.
Thrilled.
So will I start with the first question, or do you want to
you decide. Do you want to give an overview of what I'm very conscious when I say what you do, and it's like you have to be careful. It's not all about, but do you want to give an overview of what you do, or do you want to go with the questions and let it?
What's your first question? Let's see what that one is.
Perfect. Okay. Who is your hero?
Oh, who is my hero? Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? And I suppose maybe should I introduce a little bit about myself first to kind of explain then who my hero is?
Perfect.
So I'll tell a little bit about my life so far.
And just to say, the light is perfect now. Because do I have to keep an eye on the LIT.
Yeah, you do.
But no, it's fine. It just went in and out a little bit, but it's fine now. So if you stay there, we'd be grand.
I won't move from here.
Look lovely.
Yeah. So I suppose the story began for me in my teenage years, my 20s. And, you know, for me, I was having a really nice time. I had my son when I was 21. I was a single mom. I didn't find that too difficult. It was a very joyful experience. And, you know, he has been one of my greatest people to learn from through the years, because I guess in a way, people come in at different times, don't they, you know, into the world, and they just are different. And I did recognize that in my son later on in life. But I had him at 21, and then I had a lovely family home with mom and dad and my brother and my sister, and nice family and cousins around and aunties and uncles, and it was really lovely. And dad became sick when I was about 25, never great on timelines, May, but he became sick when I was about 25, which was really quite young, and it was scary. And I just knew he'd recover well, and he did. He had a heart attack, and he recovered very well. And only recovering from that. And I remember sitting there at Christmas at the dinner table, and he wasn't able to swallow. So he'd go up to the bathroom and come back down, and we didn't think too much of it. But what led us then into a road of, he had esophageal cancer, and it took a long time to find that for him, because it was so deep of where it was hidden. And by the time I was 28, then he was dead. And that was you know, at 28, you're just kind of starting out, aren't you? You don't even know yourself. You don't know life. You have the protection of your family around you.
Yeah.
So 28, it was devastating to lose my father. And I suppose in a way, when you ask me that question of who my hero was and is, my father is that man, because you know, he was the man for me who made me feel protected. He was the man who made me feel loved. My daddy could do anything. He, you know, looking at it, sometimes I used to say, God, I'd love a new wardrobe in my bedroom. He'd have it built.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I wanted a new shiny wardrobe from the shops, but he'd build it from like wood he had out the back and stuff like that. So to describe him, he for me, he was a man who could do anything, and an absolutely amazing family man. So when that happens, isn't it, when you watch that person you love take that last breath, it just, you don't even know, because it's just in a surreal place, isn't it, of going along with that type of illness. And when that happens, then not only do you lose your father, but your mother's there, and she has to, at a very young age, deal with the grief of that. So in a way, you've lost a lot of your mother as well, which it just happens, because she could never be the same person again.
No.
So family life changed a lot then. It was very much kind of trying to protect my mother of what she's doing, how is she doing. I just really took on that role of trying to help her. Looking, I suppose, into the future, then you realize then that it isn't me that my mom wants. You know, I can do my best for her, you know, and it takes you years to realize that you can only give so much. The person who she needs and wants and is lonely for in her life isn't there. So, you know, I tried many different things, and, you know, I do feel I was a very good support to her. But in doing a lot of that, I felt then that my own grief, I didn't deal with that grief, because I focused on somebody else. I don't know where that grief was. And I suppose in a way what I done really was, to be honest, I drank a lot.
Absolutely.
At that time in my life, you know, you were either coming along for the party or you were boring. You know, so it was like, when we go out, it's like, don't go home at 1 or 2 o'clock. We have to rock it till 6 or 7 in the morning. Because when I looked back at it, I just realized it was an absolute escape. That I didn't want to go back into the reality of how family life had changed, and it was so hard. And at that stage, I didn't really have any coping skills. Didn't go for counseling. You know, the head on me now would have said, God, get help, Louise, try and get help, you know, but I didn't. And that's just my way of dealing with it. I found out years later that I didn't, because in a way for me, wherever this happened in my life, my heart was very closed off, very protected. Couldn't go into those emotions, whether that happened to me in my teenage years, whether it happened to me there when Dad died. I don't know, but my heart closed, and it took a long time and a lot of work to open my heart again. It really did. So a few things happened around that time then. I don't mind talking about this. I was to be married when I was 24, around 24. I'd had Lee, and I met a guy. I thought he was going to be great, and it just wasn't. For whatever reason. So I called off the wedding maybe about 6 months just before the wedding was to take place, you know. And looking back at that, I think, God, that's a very brave kind of thing to do. You knew it wasn't right for you. You didn't just go along with it. It was hard. It was absolutely hard. And then I suppose around the time of when Dad was dying, I'd met another partner, and again I was to be married again, and that just didn't work at all for whatever reasons I won't go into either. But there was the second wedding that was called off, you know. And when I look back at that now in my life now, I think, oh my God, you know, because I talk at the place and all. It's like, but I was learning a bit about myself. The first one I hid an awful lot of emotions of how it affected me, you know. The second one, I was learning, I suppose, in a way, just to let people know, well, this is what's happened, and I'm not afraid to tell people. So there was a bit of growth and learning in it. But I do look back at that person, and I think to myself, God, I'm actually proud of you. You know, that's a big thing. There's not many people who can say in their 20s, twice they were to be married, and just went, okay, for whatever reason, not to keep face or anything, these have to go, and they're not suiting my life, you know.
Takes a lot.
Anyway, that's kind of something that happened as well. But probably I'm desperate on timelines, but I would say about 2 years after Dad died, and I was doing serious drinking and all that, I did start to get quite unwell with migraines, and they were there. I could have, like, you know, vomiting, that type of thing, migraine for about 3 days after drinking and stuff. So I knew that in some way what was my crutch would have to be looked at, and I didn't know how bad it was really going to get. But something happened to me, and you know, I don't even go in to describe what it is that happened to me, but one day I woke up and my whole body was absolutely shaking. Now, I looked in the mirror and I couldn't see it shaking, but to me, from the pit of my stomach right up to my head, my spine was absolutely shaking like this. And I think I stayed with it for about a day, and then the next day it hadn't gone away, and it was really seriously rocking me. So I went to the doctor anyway, and he put me on Valium. Now, he said to me, you are not shaking, your heart is fine, your blood pressure is fine. But as I sat in that doctor's office, I said to him, my whole body is shaking intensely. And he said to me, it actually isn't. But anyway, that was my experience of it. But looking back at it, I was like chalk and cheese as a person from the time of that to before to who I became after that. And, you know, I often say to my husband, I don't know what happened. We could label it as this, that, and anything. But I just know it was something that shook me up into something different. So from that day onwards, I started to question everything. I started to question the way I think. I couldn't stop questioning, where's my dad? Where's he gone? How do I cope? How do I move on? To the point that I felt I had this voice in my head, Caroline, that never stopped day and night. And that was another journey to go on then, because I started to look at that voice and I started to think, who is that voice? Where is that voice coming from? Is that voice coming from my brain? Is that voice coming from my chest? If that voice is there and it's keeping me awake at night, why can't I control that voice? So it went on a very, very long mission of trying to control that voice and see where it came from. And I tried many things. You know, the first thing I would have tried is I was down in Dunleary, and we're going back to, I mean, I'm 50 now, so you're going back to, I was about 32, maybe 33. There wasn't the internet the way there is now, but I stumbled across somewhere meeting these Buddhist nuns that practiced in town.
Yeah.
And I used to go in and I used to meditate with them. I used to chant with them. I'd go to angel card readings. I'd get Reiki healing.
Yeah.
I tried so many things to really start to try and quieten down that voice, because I was intrigued by that voice of how come I can move my arm? How can I can speak? Well, how come I can't actually quieten down that voice?
Yeah.
So it was just a journey of that, but running alongside of that, my migraines were getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I really had probably, it was developing into like 12 chronic years of, you know, ovulation and menstruation. For each one of those, it was 3 or 4 days of literally on the toilet floor, losing the eyesight in one eye, vomiting nonstop, you know, and then you're only recovering from that, and you've about a week, and you're going into the next one.
Yeah.
And they were just getting worse and worse and worse. I was on serious medication. You know, went to the migraine society, all these things. I really tried everything. And I suppose you get to the stage then with medication as well, that the doctor starts to say to you, you're actually on such strong medication and you're at the highest you can go, that you cannot keep taking that each month and twice a month, and you are at risk of a stroke.
Yeah.
So you're kind of left with that, and it did leave me with the feeling of so many times I lay in that bed and I begged to die.
Yeah.
I said, please, the pain was from head to toe, the eyeballs, the neck, the ears. You couldn't speak, you couldn't even drink. It was a horrendous time, and went on for years. So it was just a journey then of me saying to myself, well, do I keep on this medication, or do I find a way, you know, to try and heal myself some way, which I had no idea where I was going or what I was going to do with that. And, you know, it was like saying, the doctor was saying, look, you go on beta blockers and we'll keep you on this, try you on this. So I just said, you know what, I'm just completely coming off the medication. And I did. And I had to go through it with no medication, which was the worst thing. But it made me feel connected to myself. It made me realize other things in my life. And I started searching out for other things. Now, the funny thing is, when you don't realize that there's so much help around you. At that time, I was a manager in one of the chain of health stores, and I had got that job, and I was delighted with myself, because really, you know, I was a single mom in my 20s, and I worked in pubs doing the lunches. I worked in different places. I'd done loads of house cleaning, and I always wanted something better. I worked in Unislim, and I loved giving the talks and helping people and stuff like that. And I went for the interview for this job as management, and without a doubt, I said to myself, I have nothing on my CV, but I want this job so deeply. And I knew when I was going for that interview that I was sitting with people with huge CVs. And I got the job. I got the job. And it was kind of like, sometimes I look back and I kind of think to myself, how did you even get that job? And I asked my area manager, you know, a couple of months later, I said, what was it about me that you, because I got really close with her, that you actually decided, why would you give the job to me over other people? And she said to me that, she said, you had nothing on your CV, but your enthusiasm was huge.
Absolutely.
It's funny how you can, you know, you kind of look at something and you don't know what's around the corner for you.
No.
So I started to, you know, advertise for jobs, and people, you know, we'd be needing work for different other shops and things like that. And I got into the different roles within the company, and I met this amazing woman, and her name was Sue, and she had lived in Japan for 20 years. And as soon as we became friends, then she came to work in my shop, and we did become friends. But she was a woman who walked as if she was Japanese in life. Although she was Italian, she'd lived there for maybe 25 years and just took on the whole psyche of the old Japanese, not the new Japanese, the old way of the Japanese people. And I suppose looking back, there was so many extraordinary things to her that I only found out later, that I kind of thought, sometimes you look at her and you kind of think, she's not even hardly of this world, of how she felt, what she could feel from people. Intriguing. But her first thing to me about the migraines was, you are totally creating this yourself. And I was, to be honest now, I was disgusted to hear that. I was like,
say you were fairly pissed with her.
But she said to me, if you take full responsibility for this, she said, I can help you, and I can train you in a way that you take responsibility for everything that you put into your body, your mental health, every way that you think. And it's going to be a huge amount of work, but you can give yourself back your life. Now, I just kind of thought, you know what? I have nothing here. So I said, I will go and do whatever. So I started studying with her. We used to go into her kitchen, and then her classes got bigger. More people started to get interested. And we would go for 2 years over to her kitchen and her sitting room. And she started to cook for us. And she started to teach us about the energy of food, the energy of ailments. And also she started teaching us about a thing. It's called, God, I can't even remember the name. I wrote it down, Jiko Gyoshi, because Jiko Gyoshi, she taught us, means to be unsatisfied in life. And at the time, I didn't really understand what it meant too much, or the impact that it would have on my life. But what it was then was looking at how you think, looking at how you're programmed, how you've adapted through life, and learning the skills to be able to slow down the brain slightly in how you think, and observe where you're coming from and observe what you're feeling. So an awful lot of work of, even maybe every 2 or 3 hours, you could be doing anything. You just would take 2 minutes to just go inside. What's in there? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What way am I breathing? And for me, it was a big journey, because when I went inside first to the feeling of myself, it was gray. I'll always describe it as barbed wire, like steel wool, which was barbed wire. And I could only go in for not even hardly a second and come back out. I could not go into that place. I could not go into that place at all. But she said to me, you will never heal unless you start to go in and peel those layers of the emotions that are actually making you sick. Because she taught me that, before you even become sick with anything, you are already emotionally sick, and it's the emotions that lead you to the path of illness. I mean, the training was amazing. It's not training that you would ever have found here in the West. And I was so blessed to meet this woman.
You were meant to meet her.
So intrigued. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, because I had to cut out absolutely, basically everything that I ate. Nothing could be in a package. Nothing could be home, you had to make everything had to be organic. So at that stage, I had to eat quality over quantity. And I really couldn't cook that well. So she started teaching us all cooking classes. And it's not the easiest to get great flavor out of, vegetables. And then we're using loads of Japanese things and we haven't got a clue. So my whole life since then has been studying this, which is called macrobiotics. And also, she left after 2 years then. But what I noticed within those 2 years was that although the migraines didn't go away, the intensity of them came down and they were not as frequent. So I kind of thought, well, that has never happened here. So it's definitely something that I need to do. And we meditated, and I went into a different world that I didn't know anything about, but that all came into my life, and it became a way of living. It absolutely became a way of living. And I suppose earlier on, as you're clearing kind of things, I always say it's like clearing my onion. It's like I have something in there and I need to peel these
Yeah.
layers, leave it for a couple of months, because you got to deal with what's come up.
Yeah.
You got to move forward. You got to see where that's coming from. Is it coming from a place of ego? Do I even
Yeah.
care where it's come from?
Mm-hmm.
But I have to change that. You know, even looking back, there was so many relationships that I found that were so damaged.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I spent 3 years with one person in particular, meditating and chanting every morning with a white light between my heart and theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't comfortable being in their company. And 3 or 4 years later, I was able to sit in their company and absolutely feel pure love from my heart. You know, so when you see those changes, although it takes a long time,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, so that's kind of the journey where I've been with that. But things happened through there as
Wow.
well. Yeah, it was really quite big. And
you know, I just, and you know, we've got to know each other over the last year, which we were meant to meet, and I
yeah,
really, but I'm sitting here and it's like I feel so privileged you've brought me into, and I know it's some of and not all of your experiences, but just how you're so truthful. Yeah, but you're a no bullshit person, Louise. Anyway, I know, and that's I just love you. And I just was sitting listening, and there's so much that you've shared that Annie, that I could tap in, I could think about. And to me, that the barbed wire, I just thought, God, that's around our heart. Holy sweet divine. It's, you know, but then how with your dad and the truthfulness of how, yeah, let's throw the drink on or whatever. But
yeah,
and nearly having to get to a place of, well, I'll either make it or I won't make it, and that being so sick. But just the journey then with the lady, and as you say, it's hard work. And I think once we come to this earth,
yeah,
suffering is inevitable. It's
yeah,
just, it's how we sometimes manage it, whether we'll survive it or not. And it's nearly letting go. And like that, people came into your life. And I know when we do be chatting like about the food, and you know, I remember we did, because I talked to you straight away, because we sit. So just that people, myself and Louise, I work
yeah,
in the GP practice in Cabinteely, and Louise is at the desk here in the dental, and it's all like that. But there was just this, and I have gone into GP practices so that I could be anonymous, and it's on my terms what I choose to share and don't
yeah,
share, and that has been important to me. And there was just this energy between yourself and myself, and I knew when I shared with you about John and how he left this earth, I knew I could trust. And I'm very struck what you said, because my heart has to be closed, protected, the whole lot, because it's like, holy shit, how do you survive something like this? But I remember one particular thing I chose to share with you, that when John had physically died, and the trauma and the horrific devastation of it, and he is so much more than how he left this earth. And I remember saying to you, do you know what I remember, Louise? One of the many things was, I said, my senses went huge. I said, and from the time, days, nearly that day and days, I was rubbing creams and oils and these smells on my hands, and there was like everything got heightened. And I knew also that I was very disconnected from life, because I had to, everything had to go like that to try and survive it. And I remember you said, and I thought, she just gets it. And you said to me, I said, it's like all my senses, because I'd be going over to the bag in the cupboard, putting on perfume. You go, why are you out there, Caroline? I'd be spraying away, and we have a little chat. But you turned to her and said to me, the scents were keeping you grounded. And I said, without me even realizing, because I just want to up there, John, need you now, need you to talk to me. And it was like, I need to move into that consciousness. I need to, which was happening, but the senses. But I remember you saying, and when I thought of it, I thought, without me knowing what I was doing, something was saying, gotta keep her on this ground, on this earth. And it was the smells. And to this day, I have a very different relationship. But when you said that, it was like, yes, something was saying, okay, you can't, so we're going to help you with your senses. But
Yeah.
but I was staying in that conscious bit as well. So I always remember when we had that little chat at the cupboard.
And you know what, Caroline, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because when you say something was keeping you, you know, it isn't it? It's like, for me, it's like, what is that
Yeah,
something, you
yeah,
know? I think sometimes when your life changes, in all our lives change in
yeah.
different ways, and you know, as you say, suffering is part of life, unfortunately, all
Yeah,
of us. But for me, you know, I definitely felt that that something was out there.
yeah.
As a few things happened to me when, and I don't know whether I told you this story, I may have, but I will share it with you again if I did,
Thanks.
was at the time probably true. I hadn't met Sue yet with the macrobiotics, but I was certainly going to the Buddhist nuns all the time and chanting with them and really starting to do the work internally, you know, which is
Yeah,
a get up early in the morning and start facing yourself and start going in deep and start sitting with yourself. But in one of those meditations, when I was sitting in my sitting room, I was sitting there and they could be 45 minutes long.
yeah.
And in my meditation, my father was standing there. I can't remember if I shared this with you. And you know, he had a picture of my mom and my dad, and he was holding it in his hands, and his finger was pointing to my mother. And I kind of thought, you know, it was just there and it was relentless. The finger just never stopped. Now, it was just at the end of the meditation, and I came out of it and I thought to myself, did I doze off there? I wasn't asleep. I'm sitting up straight. My father was absolutely standing there.
Yeah,
I'm slightly alarmed because he bypassed himself in the picture and the finger just was constantly pointing at my mother, literally at her waist.
yeah.
So I think I was about 34 at the time. Again, I'm desperate on ages. But I thought to myself, we were going to Benamedina, me, Mam, and Lee. Lee was about 9 and he's 30 now. We were going to Benamedina on the Saturday. And I kind of thought to myself, I actually have to go to my mother now. Got into the car, drove to my mother, and went in the door, had my key, obviously, went in the door, calling to her, and there was no answer. And I went up the stairs and she's in the bedroom. So I open her bedroom door and she's lying there with the covers up and that. And I was like, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, nothing, I'm grand. Sure, look, I was just packing the case and all for Saturday, can't wait and all that. I said, Mom, you're lying in bed. That's not you. What's going on? Pulled back the duvet and her leg was 4, if not 5 times the size.
Oh, wow.
We looked at it and I thought, Ma'am, you have to go to the hospital straight away. No, I've just pulled something. I'll be fine. If I go to the hospital, they won't let me fly on Saturday. And, you know, and this was our
Yeah,
first holiday after Dad dying and
yeah.
trying
Totally
to,
get
you
it, yeah.
know, get some normality and something back into life. So anyway, we went to the hospital and she had a blood clot in her leg. That was very, very serious, let me tell you. And, you know, like, and I said, now she only asked me, you know, a couple of months later, why did you come to the house then? And I was straight with her. I said, Ma'am, I was meditating and Dad came in a
Yeah.
meditation to me and pointed at you. Now, she couldn't cope with hearing with that at
No,
all. And that was fine. But I didn't feel I needed to lie about it because
no.
it happened, you
Yeah, it's
know,
your
and
experience, yeah. Yeah.
that was just kind of started me on the road of, whoa, there's a whole lot out there that
Yeah.
I actually I
Happen.
want to tune into. I
Yeah.
don't really know how to, but
Yeah.
I've already started down this path and I can't go back to the person I was. I just can't. It's this path has to go along. But what I will say is that all through my life, I've worked and met people who guided me, who led me to things, you know. I met the most extraordinary people, and I'm so lucky. And Sue, you know, the lady from the macrobiotics in
Huge.
Japan, she was huge for me of changing my life. And then another friend of mine who I had drank with for years, and I knew she was a Buddhist. And, you know, I was having myself and my son, our relationship completely broke down. I was having very difficult times. And she used to come over from the north side and we used to just sit there in my house and she'd say to me, you've created this. which means you can change it. Everything in your life you are responsible for. I didn't like hearing that
Not
either,
at all, no.
Caroline. But she said to me, just chant. Now, you know, at times I'd be crying for weeks and all, because it's very hard when your relationship with your beloved son, you know, it breaks down.
Devastating.
I only realized later that sometimes things have to break down to regrow, you know.
Yeah.
So that's when the practice of Nichiren Buddhism came into my life, and that was probably about 10 years ago. And I will say that practice,
yeah,
and the practice of meditation and other things that I do have changed my life forever, to the point of, you know, now I know of what I carry, I know of what I need to heal. It'll always be a work in progress, isn't it? It's not that I'm like, oh, I'm there now. It's like, okay, let's heal the next thing. But it's having that courage to look inside. It's knowing that, you know, I am responsible for every relationship in my life. I am responsible. Everything on the outside of me is just an illusion, really, of how I view things, how I see things, of what way my mind thinks. And that led me on to really researching that I feel, you know, we're like a computer. We run on this program, but who programmed me? And where was I programmed? You know, you're programmed from your mom, your dad, your environment, the TV, the radio, the papers, everything. So I started to kind of say to myself, I want to reprogram that. That whatever that done to me, you know, I'm not my biggest self. I'm not living my life from my higher life state. So I started to watch the way I think, and that comes, I suppose, from slowing down, having a practice of meditation, having a practice of chanting, and you know, chanting for us is it's observation of the mind. It's, you know, what am I putting out there? What am I putting in? It's a connection to a universal energy that is there. It's
everywhere.
the law.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So when you realize that that's there, you realize that sometimes you're just leading your place in life from a place of fear, or you're leading it from a place of anxiety, or you're not really living in your higher life state. So that has been a work for years, to just get in deep, peel that onion. Very difficult. See where I'm going with that, and really have the responsibility for my life, that, you know, if my happiness isn't at its highest, I am responsible for that. If I have a relationship with somebody that's not great, that's my energy going out. And when you start to see that over time, changing your energy with maybe one or two people, which can take months and years, and then they completely react differently to you than what they've ever reacted, relationships changes. But it's kind of like everything outside of ourselves is an illusion, isn't it, really, from whatever mind you're looking, you know, you're looking in at, and you can change that. And I just, at one stage, I looked at my life and I kind of, you know, people who knew me would have said, oh God, you're so jolly and you're so great and all that. Truthfully, when I dug in deep, my happiness was so low. And the rest of it was filled up with fear, anxiety. I don't know who I am. And that has been my work, to absolutely, you know, every day higher my life state, so that I go out to the world, you know, as a bigger person, and I create value, in now how I think. And I, you know, and that's not coming from a place of ego, Caroline.
No,
it's just coming from a place of,
it's a massive responsibility you take, and ownership, and it's like it's complete and utter ownership, and that really, you know, going into that part of yourself and saying, okay, in all of this, and Louise, you know, you've said this is a life journey. It could be another life journey. Who knows? It could have been a few before. Who knows? But it's like you know the truth of who you are now. You also, and also what I always get from you, Louise, it's like that, you know, this is what I'm doing here and now. the outcome, who knows? It's going to do its own thing, but all I know is now, and I love, as you know, the both of us, I would be into transcendental meditation, as you know, with Dawn, and then the other one that has come into my life the last, say, 3 years is Hemisync. Both of them allow me to step out of, and like that, I can visit bigger picture. I can put out questions. I can wait for responses. I'm not desperate. I'm not, it's like something shifts that you go, okay, this is a mechanism that has been here before us and it'll be here after us. And actually it wants you to tap into it. So that I really like yourself. So I can totally relate to the chanting. I can totally relate to the meditation. It's not a tick box. It's not something, this is, and I've had a few experiences in particular in the last few years where I intentionally sit down and I specifically go into meditation, knowing that I'm going looking, I'm going asking, but like yourself, there's no desperation. There's no, like, I've no thing. What it does, and what I find beautiful, I was saying to someone the other day, when it does happen, one of my asks of life is peace, and just moments of peace, so that when the tsunamis come, and I always think, and I can feel Life and John saying, look, we'll send you the peace, embrace it, enjoy it, because you've got the tsunamis as well. And I always feel that. And when I was saying to someone the other day, especially when it's really, really just too much, I can go into nothingness. But what actually is becoming clearer for me, and it's a quietness, and it can go anyway. It's just, but in the nothingness, I always get this feeling there's everything. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but it's just, and when I say it's not of this world, it's this energy, it's this universe that, you know, we've come here, and like that, we're all heading, we've our birth dates and our death date, as we know, but there is something that if you do build a relationship, when you get past because meditation and mindfulness is beautiful, it's become a bit of a tool and a tick box, right? And that's okay, it will progress and evolve, and I was part of that as well, but not with transcendental meditation. That always sort of done its thing. And I definitely feel that if you nearly let go, it actually starts to, but it took, like me, what I was practicing until something so traumatic, and John, you know, physically leaving this earth.
Yeah.
Then it became a whole other. But I believe that if you can actually go into this type of way, not always having for it to be something so tragic, that there's actually, if you create and you put out those vibrations, there's a lovely, I like it, where you, exactly what you're saying, to create your own reality and create your own vibration. And that's on the days that you can and the moments that you can, but there's energy in your intentions. There's energies in even considering in the most painful, devastating parts of your life or suffering, where if you can get a little glimpse, and it mightn't last long, of, then life is going, okay, come on, trust us here just a little bit. But like you said, that barbed wire is going to take, it's not going to happen overnight. Sure it isn't.
No, it really isn't, you know, and I'm 20 years now on this, as we say, journey. But I suppose the powerful thing, Caroline, isn't it, is to realize is that we walk through life with suffering, and we walk through life with joy. And so either one just floats through us. And I suppose, you know, at this stage of 20 years of doing this, it's like, I know the suffering will come, and it has come strongly the last couple of years, but I've observed myself that I can watch it there. And with the breath work, I suppose I learned to detach from it, and that doesn't diminish it. It just means that it doesn't have that huge effect on my body that it used to. And in some way, you know, in the hardest way, because you know, I have had some very hard things with my son, that with that relationship breaking down, it was so difficult. But I knew it had to be. But in a way, also, I knew that with him, I didn't believe in his Buddha nature. You know, and I'm practicing this Buddhism for years, but the message of my energy that I was sending out is I don't really believe in your good energy. So I had to completely, without him being here, turn around and not only trust. I always felt I was responsible and had to do everything for him. I had to trust in him, that you detach from me, and I don't need to think too much about it, because there's this energy that I know is there for you.
Yeah.
And I'll give you another example. You know, he was going through a bit himself, and he wasn't living here with me or my husband, and you know, we really were having a very difficult year, and it was tough on his journey, and as a mom, really tough to see that as well. But probably for 6 months, I wanted him to have his home somewhere where he was safe, where he could close the door. And I'm very much into visualization. So I chanted and I visualize. And not only with visualization, I believe you've got to, because in a way, you know, I've always felt when you read these books that say, oh, you know, think like this, think like that, you know, it's like, they're just words. You know, even visualizing things, visualize this, visualize that. They really are just words and unleashing things that come through your brain. But for me, absorbing the feeling of what it feels like when my son is safe, he's protected, he's in an environment where, you know, it's his home. And I carried that feeling in my heart of absolute joy for 6 months. And I visualized exactly where he would live, white carpets, glass around, loads of trees, loads of sunlight coming in, amazing for his mental health. And when I walked in to his apartment, what did I see? I just couldn't believe it. White carpets, glass, and trees. And I just thought to myself, you know what, we're just here floating along in this life. There's a whole thing there with potential that is huge, that I'm only tapping into the last while. I'm intrigued by it, but it's way bigger than
and do you know what's lovely, Louise? I'm talking over you there, and I know we're in a little while, that's why I want to check one or two things, which I know, do you know what, it's such a privilege sitting here and chatting with you. And when you were saying that last piece, one of the things John for a good few years practiced as an acupuncturist, so again I'd be familiar with energy and chi and the whole lot, and he was always sticking needles in me. But anyway, he and then a motor mechanic before that, so talk about really diverse and all, but his consistent thing was the ebb and flow of life, and he was crystal clear of that you know, when you really think of it, you know, look around, but his thing was that there's an ebb and there's a flow to life, and if you can step into it, if you can lean it, it's a bit like electricity, you know, I always think that way. And it's like, right, there's all this, if you go into a room, and I think it's amazing, people go, some real heaviness in the room, and you know there's a personality or an energy, and you're like, oh mother God. And that's and often sometimes when people go out of a room, they open the window and they go, oh holy Lord, that was heavy, wasn't it? So it's evident all around us. And I'd be like yourself, I'm much more aware of, okay, and particularly because I'm sort of, there's that, oh God, if it kicks off stuff in me, so I'm much more aware of, okay, where, and not in a fearful way, it's just a bit like you said, I have a responsibility, and it's like, okay, non-interference here, lean back here, this isn't yours, the content isn't yours, the energy flowing isn't yours, and you lean back to that. And I always think of that ebb and flow. So even if you're in a tough place struggling, you're leaning back and holding whatever amount of energy you have, just so you're fine for that moment. And then you see, okay, where do I need to move? How can I manage this? Or do I just need to remove myself? And that's the things that you can sort of start to say, right, what energy am I picking up? What am I bringing? And then not even analysing. It's nothing to do with that. It's just getting a sense of how or what's around you, isn't it? Can I ask you? Go on, sweetheart,
Just to say also, I probably have had my most growth in the depths of suffering. That is when my life state has shifted the most, you know, and it's a hard, you know, you don't know why it has to be like that.
No.
But now I recognize in that deep, deep suffering, there's a lesson in there for me
Yeah.
somewhere, you know, and you don't always see it at the time.
No.
It's only when you look back, isn't it, that you think, I needed to work on something, I needed to let go something. And at the end of the day, you know, the universe wants us to be happy, and we have that right to be happy. And it will always work to try and help us. You know, everything that used to come to me, if I didn't deal with it, it would come back to me 20 times before I go, okay, I got to look at this one, you know, because it's like that universal energy wants you to shift out of that. And you want to be on the earth, one of these people who vibrate at that certain light.
Yeah.
And the universe wants that. So it's like we're always given these opportunities,
Yeah.
you know, and you have to see it as an opportunity. And I know that is so hard.
Yeah. And look at it like that. It's like, and what I love about these conversations is like we said, I thrilled, and you know, do you want to have a meaningful conversation around what meaning you're getting from your life and what you're getting from life itself? So it's like so personal after that. It's like me and you are choosing to have this conversation, sharing what has been so meaningful for you and the amount of suffering and what you're learning. And then, as I say, I know for me, I'm trusting, and I said to Life and to John before we chatted, and I was saying to you, just guide and direct me, just that I'm okay. And that's good. But I trust that. Do you know what I mean? So that's a constant. Now, I could sit all night with you. Can I ask you? I know and I know you're going to pop back in. Yeah, no, you're coming back in. I'm not letting you go anywhere. I feel, if it's okay. So, and I mean, what's like that one question, and what your dad has brought to this conversation. What, you know, it just, I'm thanking them. What's his first name?
Brendan. His name's Brendan.
Okay,
yeah.
I got to meet Brendan with you tonight, and I'm just very grateful because that, you know, your dad and being your hero, just how the conversation has gone. So I'm just really grateful, and I just want to check with you. I know we've only a few minutes.
Can I say something about
please?
Dad's grief?
Yeah, please.
And I think I may have slightly spoke to you about this as well, is that, you know, for my grief for years, it was really avoidance. And then it became such pain. And then just out of nowhere, one day, you know, I often just wanted my dad's arms around me, because I know he'd hold me tight and he'd say everything's going to be okay. And one day that lifted off me, and I just felt the gratitude of having the most beautiful man in my life and my relationship with them. And I walk every day with that feeling now of, I know. So in a way, yes, I've lost my dad, that he doesn't walk on this earth with me, but he walks with me every day, because I carry that feeling of the energy he put into me, you know. And I've spoke to you before about many times, even when I'm cooking, I might be in just a deep thought of that feeling, and I'd feel something like hair, just like a bunch of hair shifting, that I'd actually get a fright. And you know, there's been so many things. I mean, I've had a good few. I don't even have time to talk about them now, but you know, because it's like when that grief shifts, and it probably happened with the same time when I was able to shift that from my heart and try and feel pure love again, you know. So it's like it's lovely to walk with him now. It really is, you know. And it's, I suppose, with all relationships, even though he's not right here with me, it changes, doesn't it? And your heart changes, and how you walk and how you feel. But that energy of how a person makes you feel, that never goes. That you carry that, it's there waiting.
Gets stronger.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And that's beautiful.
It is. And tell me this, and I know we were just chatting earlier, and I would always go back to John O'Donoghue. I'm in the we're all in the visible world for now, and the people gone ahead are in the invisible world, but we walk side by side. Now, before we finish up, you said you had, and I have to say, I'll say this quickly, how synchronicity. I love it. We've been chatting away and together and sitting side by side and all. And then I find out that your lovely cousins were people I grew up with all my life in Ballybrack.
Because I didn't know you before I went there at all.
Yeah.
You know,
and it was just lovely. It was just lovely, Jen, Sinead and Siobhan, and it was like, and I'm looking at a picture and I go, what's Louise doing in with the lads? And there you were, and it was just so lovely. And I know I can see.
And I'm so privileged to have them as my
Oh,
family.
you can see the love you have. Yeah, you can really see it.
Oh my God, they're just all so beautiful. Yeah,
and they're absolutely gorgeous. And so would you, I know you said you had a piece you'd like to read. Is that all right?
Yeah. So my practice of chanting I would do mainly for a half hour to an hour every morning, and we do it in the evening as well. So prayer in my life, which is what we call the chanting, is it's a practice of Dhamaka, is huge. So you know, at times when I'd be feeling very discouraged and very in a dark place, I look at this, it's right there in my view every morning, and this is what uplifts me and brings me into, shifts that energy and brings me to a higher place. So I'll read it for you now.
Thank you.
Prayer is the courage to persevere. It is the struggle to overcome our own weakness and lack of confidence in ourselves. It is the act of impressing in the very depths of our being the conviction that we can change the situation without fail. Prayer is the way to destroy all fear. It is a way to banish sorrow, the way to light a torch of hope. It is the revolution that rewrites the scenario of our destiny. And that was written by Dasaka Ikeda. He would be my sensei from Japan. And I've gone to Japan and chanted in the hall of the Great Bow. And, you know, but he walks with me and has many times put his hand on my shoulder and guided me in ways that I didn't want to go, but he told me I got to go there. So he's another one that walks with me. And
beautiful. Beautiful. And tell me, because I know I'll be nabbing you again to come back in, because there's so much there that it'd be lovely even to explore it a little bit more and say, okay, so how could, you know, people, or if they're interested, but again, we're having the conversation we're meant to have for now. We're in the place we're meant to be. We're not pulling that apart at all, because it's beautiful. Is it okay to finish up, or is there anything else? Are you okay with
we've had a great chat, as we always do, Caroline. And
mad about
it's been lovely. It's been really lovely. Yeah, I've enjoyed every minute, and thank you for inviting me on.
And for me, Louise, I'm still digesting. You know, I'm after getting so much, and it just very, very meaningful, and just sharing that the way you did it. Just have to say thank you so much. I no doubt will see you in the little cupboard spraying again at some stage. I'm amazed they still let the pair of us back in, but thank you so much. And one of the things, just very quickly, some people, and just to say to everyone over the weeks, and I was talking to Olivia, people were saying there's certain things that are mentioned in the podcast and books and little practices and all. So myself and Olivia are going to have a chat, because I know there'll be a lot in yours tonight as well, where people are saying it would be great if we'd links. And actually Ashleen in America said it. I'm so grateful. And a few other people had said if there was just ways of just tapping in. So we'll, among us all, we'll dig out together, because this podcast is doing its own thing. So we'll get links and pieces. So listen, you enjoyed the rest of your evening. I have to make sure I press the button.
And I love your wallpaper is fantastic behind it.
Cool?
Am I seeing a Japanese vibe there?
Yeah. I know. Actually, I get a nice feeling from it. There's just something peaceful about it. It sort of came along, and it's like, that feels right. Yeah. So listen, I'm going to say good night to you. I'm going to say thank you so much, and I'm sending so much love, Louise, always.
From my heart to yours, Caroline. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sweetheart.
See you soon.